Lola Tung and Christopher Briney's unforgettable chemistry fans can't stop rewatching. There's something almost dangerous about the kind of chemistry that feels too real, the kind that lingers even after the screen fades to black, the kind that makes you question where acting ends and something deeper begins. That's exactly the magic that and have created in a connection so electric, so quietly intense, that fans simply can't stop pressing rewind. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't rely on grand declarations or overly dramatic moments. Instead, it breathes in the spaces between words, in glances that linger a second too long, in conversations that feel unfinished yet complete all at once. Their chemistry isn't loud, it's haunting, and that's what makes it unforgettable. From the very first scene they share, there's an unspoken understanding between them. Belly, played by Lola Tung, carries a softness mixed with a quiet longing, a character caught between who she was and who she's becoming. Conrad, brought to life by Christopher Briney, is her perfect contrast, guarded, distant, yet deeply emotional beneath the surface. Together, they don't just act, they collide. It's in the way Conrad looks at Belly like she's both his comfort and his chaos. It's in the way Belly tries to read him, even when he refuses to be understood. Their dynamic feels less like scripted romance and more like something pulled from real life, messy, complicated, and painfully beautiful. What makes their chemistry so rewatchable is its authenticity. You don't feel like you're watching two actors hitting marks. You feel like you're witnessing something deeply personal unfold. Every small moment becomes significant. A brush of hands, a fleeting smile. Even silence becomes a language they both speak fluently. Fans have dissected their scenes endlessly, replaying moments not because they missed something, but because they felt something. And feelings like that are rare in modern storytelling. In a world where romance is often exaggerated, Lola and Christopher deliver something raw and grounded, something that feels real enough to hurt. One of the most captivating aspects of their connection is the tension, not the kind that's forced, but the kind that builds slowly, almost unbearably, until it becomes impossible to ignore. It's the tension of almost confessions, of words left unsaid, of emotions held back just long enough to make every interaction feel charged. And when those walls finally crack, when Conrad lets even a glimpse of vulnerability slip through, it hits harder than any dramatic monologue ever could, because it's earned, because it feels true. Their chemistry also thrives on contrast. Belly is open, expressive, learning to embrace her emotions. Conrad is closed off, wrestling with feelings he can't quite articulate. But instead of pushing them apart, these differences pull them closer. They balance each other in a way that feels both natural and inevitable. There's also a quiet rhythm to their interactions, like a song only they can hear. They move in sync without even trying, pausing at the same time, speaking over each other in moments that feel unscripted, sharing looks that say more than words ever could. It's this rhythm that keeps audiences hooked, drawing them back again and again. But perhaps what truly makes their chemistry unforgettable is the vulnerability they bring to it. There's no fear in their performances, no hesitation in showing the messy, imperfect sides of love. They allow their characters to be flawed, to make mistakes, to hurt each other and still find their way back. That kind of storytelling doesn't just entertain, it resonates. It's why fans don't just watch their scenes, they experience them. It's why social media is flooded with edits, slow-motion clips, and heartfelt reactions. People aren't just shipping Belly and Conrad, they're connecting with something deeper, something that reminds them of their own stories, their own almost, their own what-ifs. And then there's the unspoken question that lingers in every rewatch: how much of this is acting? Because when Lola Tung and Christopher Briney share the screen, it doesn't feel performative. It feels lived in. It feels like history exists between them, even in moments where none is explicitly shown. That kind of connection can't be faked. It has to be felt. Their chemistry is a reminder of what great storytelling can achieve when everything aligns: writing, direction, performance, and that rare, intangible spark between actors. It's not something you can manufacture. It's something that either exists or doesn't. And in their case, it undeniably does. As the story of The Summer I Turned Pretty continues to unfold, one thing remains certain: their connection will remain at its heart. No matter where the plot goes, no matter how relationships shift or evolve, the bond between Belly and Conrad will always be the emotional anchor. Because some chemistry doesn't fade, it lingers. It grows stronger with every rewatch, every pause, every moment fans choose to relive. And maybe that's the real magic of Lola Tung and Christopher Briney. They didn't just create a love story, they created a feeling, one that stays with you you long after the episode ends, quiet, powerful, and impossible to forget. And yet, what makes their story even more compelling is not just the chemistry itself, but the way it evolves, because with and nothing ever feels static. Every glance, every conversation, every silence carries the weight of something that has changed. Love in Ichi isn't a straight line. It bends, it breaks, it rebuilds itself in unexpected ways. And that's where their chemistry becomes even more addictive, because it reflects something deeply human. The idea that two people can drift apart and still feel tethered, that even distance cannot erase what once existed. As the story deepens, their connection takes on new layers. There's a maturity that wasn't there before, a quiet understanding shaped by heartbreak and growth. Belly is no longer just the girl who dreams. She's learning to choose, to stand her ground, to question what love really means. Conrad, on the other hand, begins to unravel in ways that make him both more fragile and more real. And when they meet again in these new versions of themselves, something shifts. It's no longer just about longing, it's about history. You can see it in the way they hesitate before speaking, as if weighing every word against what they've already lost. You can feel it in the tension that no longer comes from uncertainty alone, but from memories that refuse to fade. Their chemistry doesn't disappear with time. It transforms into something deeper, heavier, and somehow even more captivating. There are moments where they barely say anything at all, yet those scenes speak the loudest. A simple look across a room becomes loaded with everything they've been through. A brief conversation feels like the continuation of 1,000 unfinished ones. It's this emotional continuity that keeps fans hooked, because it feels real in a way that's almost unsettling. And then there's the push and pull. Just when it seems like they might find their way back to each other, something shifts again. A misunderstanding, a fear, a truth that arrives too late. Their story refuses to settle into comfort, and that unpredictability is what makes it so impossible to look away from. Fans don't just rewatch their happy moments, they revisit the painful ones too, because even in heartbreak, their chemistry never falters. If anything, it becomes stronger, more intense, more unforgettable. It's in the way Conrad struggles to express what he feels, yet his eyes give him away every single time. It's in the way Belly tries to move forward, yet something always pulls her back. They are constantly orbiting each other, caught in a gravity neither of them fully understands. And maybe that's what makes their connection so powerful. It's not perfect. It's messy. It's complicated. It's filled with missed chances and unspoken truths. But within that imperfection lies something undeniably real, something that resonates far beyond the screen. There's also a certain vulnerability in the way Lola and Christopher portray these moments. They don't shy away from the discomfort. They let their characters sit in it, breathe in it, even when it hurts. And that honesty is what elevates their chemistry from something entertaining to something unforgettable. You start to notice the smallest details, the way Belly's voice softens around Conrad even when she's trying to be strong, the way Conrad's guarded demeanor cracks just slightly whenever she's near. These subtle choices build a connection that feels layered and lived in, like a story that existed long before the cameras started rolling, and the audience feels it. That's why the rewatches never stop, because each time there's something new to discover, a look you didn't notice before, a line that hits differently now, a moment that suddenly carries more meaning than it did the first time. Their chemistry isn't just about what's shown, it's about what's felt. The spaces between actions, the emotions that linger just beneath the surface, the sense that something important is always on the verge of being said, but never quite is. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Not every love story needs a perfect resolution. Some are meant to exist in that in-between space where feelings are real, connections are undeniable, but timing isn't always kind. Lola Tung and Christopher Briney capture that space perfectly. They make you believe in almosts, in maybes, in the kind of love that doesn't fade even when it changes form. And as their story continues, one question quietly lingers in the hearts of everyone watching. What if this isn't the end for them? Because with a connection like theirs, endings never feel final. They feel like pauses, like something unfinished, waiting for the right moment to begin again. And until that moment comes, fans will keep watching, rewinding, reliving, holding on to every look, every word, every silence, because some chemistry doesn't just stay on screen. And just when it feels like you've understood them, mapped out every glance, decoded every silence, and do something unexpected, they surprise you. Because the magic of their chemistry isn't just in what's written, it's in what they bring beyond the script. There's an instinct in the way they perform together, like they're constantly reacting to each other in real time rather than following a predetermined path. And that spontaneity, it's what makes every scene feel alive. As the story edges closer to emotional crossroads, their connection begins to carry a quiet urgency. Time feels like it's running out in ways that no one says out loud. There's a sense that every interaction might matter more than the last. like something is building toward a moment that could change everything. And in those moments, their chemistry shifts yet again. It becomes softer, pounds, but sharper. There's a tenderness in how they look at each other now, layered with the weight of everything they've been through. It's no longer just about desire or confusion. It's about understanding, about seeing each other clearly, maybe for the first time. But clarity doesn't always make things easier. In fact, it often makes things harder, because now when Belly looks at Conrad, she isn't just seeing who he is, she's seeing who he was, who he tried to be, and who he might never become. And when Conrad looks at Belly, there's something almost heartbreaking in his expression, like he knows she's slipping out of reach, even if she's standing right in front of him. That's where their chemistry becomes almost unbearable to watch, not because it's weak, but because it's too strong, too real, too filled with things that can't be undone. There are scenes where they stand just a few feet apart, yet it feels like miles. Conversations that should be simple somehow become heavy with meaning. Even the air between them feels charged, like it's carrying all the words they can't bring themselves to say. And still, there are glimpses of what they used to be. A shared laugh that comes too easily. A moment of eye contact that lingers just a little too long. A silence that feels comfortable instead of painful, if only for a second. Those moments are dangerous, because they remind both the characters and the audience of what's still there, what never really left. And that's what keeps pulling fans back in. Not just the heartbreak, not just the tension, but the hope hidden inside it all. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, this story isn't finished yet. What makes Lola and Christopher's performances even more powerful is how restrained they are. They don't overplay the emotion. They don't force the connection. Instead, they trust the quiet moments, the subtle shifts, the barely noticeable changes in expression. And somehow that makes everything hit harder. A single tear feels more impactful than a dramatic breakdown. A whisper carries more weight than a shout. A look, just a look, can say everything. That level of control, that kind of emotional precision, is rare. And when two actors share it equally, it creates something almost impossible to replicate. It creates this, a chemistry that doesn't just tell a story, it becomes the story. As the narrative moves forward, one thing becomes increasingly clear. Their connection isn't defined by labels or outcomes. It isn't about whether they end up together or apart. It's about the impact they've had on each other, the way they've shaped who the other has become. Because some people don't just pass through your life. They change it. They leave a mark that doesn't fade, no matter how much time passes or how far apart you grow. And that's exactly what Belly and Conrad are to each other. A constant, a question, a memory that refuses to stay in the past. So even as new paths emerge and different choices are made, there's always that underlying pull, that invisible thread connecting them, no matter where they go. And the audience feels it every single time. That quiet pull. That unfinished feeling, that sense that something important is still waiting to happen. It's why the rewatches never lose their impact, why the same scenes can make your heart race or ache or pause in that strange, beautiful way that only the best stories can manage. Because it's never just about what's happening on screen. It's about everything that could happen, everything that almost did, everything that still might. And maybe that's the real reason fans can't let go. Not because the story is perfect, but because it feels unfinished in the most beautiful way possible. Like a song that fades out too soon. Like a goodbye that doesn't quite sound like one, like a love that refuses to be forgotten. And somewhere in all those lingering moments and unspoken words, one truth quietly remains. Some connections don't need an ending. They just need to be felt. And maybe that's where their story becomes something even more powerful, when it stops being just a story and starts feeling like a memory you never lived, yet somehow miss. Because with and in, the line between fiction and feeling blurs in the most unexpected ways. At this point, the connection between Belly and Conrad no longer needs grand moments to prove itself. It exists in fragments, in the quiet aftermath of conversations, in the pauses that stretch just a little too long, in the way their presence alone seems to shift the atmosphere of every scene they share. It's almost as if time behaves differently around them. Moments slow down, details sharpen, and everything else fades into the background. There's a certain stillness that follows them now, not empty, but full. Full of everything they've been through, everything they've lost, and everything they're still too afraid to confront. And that stillness, it speaks louder than anything they could ever say out loud. But what makes their chemistry truly unforgettable at this stage isn't just the intensity, it's the restraint. They hold back, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. You can see it in the way Belly hesitates before stepping closer, as if she's afraid of what might happen if she lets herself fall again. You can feel it in the way Conrad looks at her, like he's memorizing something he knows he might not get to keep. And that kind of emotional tension, it doesn't explode, it lingers, it builds, it quietly takes over everything. There are moments where it feels like the entire world has narrowed down to just the two of them. No distractions, no outside noise, just a shared history hanging in the air between them, waiting to be acknowledged. And yet they don't always act on it. That's the heartbreak. That's the beauty. Because sometimes the most powerful connections aren't the ones that come together. They're the ones that almost do. The ones that circle each other endlessly, never quite finding the right moment, yet never fully letting go. Lola Tung and Christopher Briney understand that space perfectly. They don't rush it. They don't try to resolve it too quickly. Instead, they let it breathe, let it exist in all its complicated, unfinished glory, and that's what makes fans feel so deeply attached. It's not just about wanting Belly and Conrad to be together. It's about understanding why they can't be. At least not yet. It's about recognizing the timing, the fear, the growth that still needs to happen. And most of all, it's about holding on to that fragile hope that someday things might be different. Because even when they're apart, there's something undeniably constant about them. A pull, a rhythm, a quiet awareness of each other that never really disappears. Even in scenes where they barely interact, you can feel their presence lingering in the background of each other's lives. It's subtle, almost invisible, but once you notice it, you can't unsee it. That's the kind of chemistry that goes beyond dialogue, beyond plot, beyond even the characters themselves. It becomes something atmospheric, something that shapes the entire tone of the story without needing to be directly addressed. And as the narrative continues to unfold, that atmosphere only grows stronger. There's a sense that everything is leading somewhere, not necessarily to a perfect ending, but to a moment of truth, a moment where all the unspoken words, all the hidden emotions, all the almost finally rise to the surface. And when that moment comes, it won't need to be loud. It won't need dramatic music or sweeping declarations, because with them, the smallest shift is enough. A step closer, a breath held, a single word spoken at the right time. That's all it would take to change everything. Until then, though, the story lingers in that delicate in-between. That space where nothing is fully resolved, yet nothing is truly over. And maybe that's why fans can't stop rewatching, because every time it feels like they might catch something new, something that hints at what's coming next. A look that seems more intentional, a line that suddenly carries more weight, a moment that feels like it's pointing towards something just out of reach. It turns every rewatch into a search for answers, for meaning, for hope. And in that search, the connection between Belly and Conrad only grows stronger, more layered, more real, more unforgettable, because some stories aren't meant to be consumed once and forgotten. Some are meant to be revisited again and again, each time revealing something deeper, something more personal, something that stays with you long after it ends. And that's exactly what you get. Not just a love story, not just chemistry, but a feeling that refuses to fade. A connection that doesn't need closure to be complete, and a reminder that sometimes the most unforgettable stories are the ones that never quite let you go.